Right, so we will be talking about nonverbal communication for today's lesson. So this is somehow very brief and somehow a review for you since we have already tackled this in our communication skills last year. No? When we talk about nonverbal communication, this is very important. Same as verbal communication because there are some things that can express through words, no, and we can only express this things, these emotions through nonverbal means. So nonverbal communication includes facial expressions, the tone and the pitch of the voice, and the gestures as well as displayed through body language. This is called kinesics, and the physical distance between communicators, or this is what we call proxemics. No? So there are things that we need understand first when we talk about nonverbal. So when we talk about nonverbal communication, this is primarily convey meaning by reinforcing, substituting, or or contradicting a verbal communication. So nonverbal communication is also used to influence others and to regulate conversational flow. Some of the experts in communication might see this nonverbal communication as a means to stop the conversation when there are things that they see in the person they're talking to, such as gestures or body language that they don't want to continue the conversation anymore. So there are cues, for them uh, to read in the body language or the expression of the uh, communicators, both communicate, not continue the conversation. One example is, of course, checking the time in the wrist. No, that signifies, of course, that he's in a hurry or she's in a hurry. There are things to settle with, or there are primary, or there are things that he or she wanted to go um, because she or he in a hurry. No, that is an example of nonverbal communication. Not telling the person that he's in a hurry, but of course, constantly checking his or her watch. No? Or if the person is doing uh, some gestures that they are not listening or attentively listening to the person talking to. That's a primary uh, contradicting verbal communication or using the influence of the nonverbal communication to regulate conversational. So when we talk about nonverbal communication, plays it plays five roles now. So there are five roles that is nonverbal. Number one is what we call the repetition. So it repeats and often strengthens the message you are making verbally. Um, After you said the word, it is followed by some repetitions of the gestures. So that's how repetition works. We also have contradiction. It can contradict the message you're trying to convey, thus indicating your listener that may not be well. Some of them can be seen in people who are lying, speaking verbally, but the things that they are saying is contradicting their actions. So those are some common roles of communication. It might come in handy when you are judging people, their actions, not their words. No? So always check if words and their actions coincide or sync together so that that's a good indicator that they're telling. But on the other hand, if it is contradicting, they might not telling. The third one is what we call substitution. It can substitute for a verbal message. Some of them need to say a word. Just simply use some symbols or signs or gestures um, to supplicate uh, their message. For example, your facial expressions often conveys a far more vivid message than words can ever or words ever can. Or uh, example for this is nodding. No need to say yes, but of course, or that is telling or agreeing to something. We also have complimenting. It may add or may add to or message. As a boss, if you pat an employee on back, instead of giving praise, it can increase the impact of your message. No? So that's an example. Uh, Using thumbs up, no? With the use of praising words. So that's a compliment to people or an employee are already a boss. So we also have ascending. It may ascend or underline a verb. Founding the table, for example, and can underline the importance of your message. So it imposed power and it imposed very important matter that everyone might need some attention for you to for them to listen to your message. So that's how verbal, non-verbal communication plays a very important in communication process. So there are types of nonverbal communication. We learned this already, but we might uh, go through with this again now. So we have the facial expression, anything that can be seen in the human face. Uh, Remember that a human face is extremely expressive. So one nod, one smile is equivalent to a message already. So it can be able to convey countless of emotions without saying a word. So unlike some forms of nonverbal communication, facial expressions are universal. The facial expressions for happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, disgust are the same across culture. You cannot say that the person is angry when he is smiling. So, however, there are people who like to uh, change their emotions, no, for them to not to misinterpret by others, but usually they are misinterpreted because of uh, their facial expressions. No? So that's the reason why they change their facial expression so that others might, of course, not misinterpret their facial expression faces. Because there are people who were born with facial expressions that are already in their face without giving some effort to it. Some people are always happy, but in fact they're not. So they look physically in a form face. No, they're happy, but reality they don't. And so there are people who are like. We also have body movement and posture. Consider how your perceptions of people are affected by the way they sit, stand, their head, way you move and carry out yourself. It communicates a wealth of information to the world. No? So this type of nonverbal communication includes posture, bearing, stance, and subtle movements that you are making. So gestures are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Is voluntarily or involuntarily. Some of them are mannerisms. No? You may wave, point, beckon, or use your hands when arguing, speaking animatedly, often expressing yourselves with gestures without thinking. However, the meaning of some gestures can be very difficult cultures because the okay sign is not very okay to other countries because it connotates other meanings. No, it can be considered as offensive, such as in the countries of Germany, Russia, and Brazil, because these hand gestures are signifying some violent reactions. No? So it's important to be careful of the gestures that we are using, avoid misinterpretations. So I suggest that you use some of gestures that are universally acknowledged and not offensive to other countries, but that can be considered by most of the countries, so that be safe in misinterpretations. No, we also have eye contact. They say that eye is the window of the soul, so this is very important when we use the eye contact, especially when uh, we are speaking to another speaker. So we say that eye contact is the basis for a person is um, attentively listening to you. But be careful as well as eye contact, because there are some countries as well, like Arab countries, who do not adhere to the eye contact. So some people are not uh, not some countries do not uh, want an eye contact, especially men and women. So want women to be seen in an eye contact. Since the visual sense is dominant, people, eye contact is an especially important type of nonverbal communication. The way you look at someone can communicate many things, express affection, or attraction. So eye contact is also important, maintaining the conversation or gauging other person or interest or response to others. We also have gestures like touch and verbal communication. Touch is very common as a nonverbal communication, because we communicate a great deal through our senses or sense of touch. Think about very different message given by a weak handshake, a warm bare hand, patronizing pat to the head or arm. So those things can uh, convey different messages, no? Depending on manner of the touch you receive from the person communicating. Also, the space can convey a message. How um, far person is communicating to you, especially in today's time. Some people are misinterpreted based on their distance when they are talking to you, because of course we are obliged to have a 1 meter distance because we are in pandemic. Space is very important as a non-verbal. Have you ever felt uncomfortable during conversation because other people was standing too close or too far from you, invading your space, or some of them are not audible enough you hear, because they are very far. We all have in physical space, and although that it differs depending on the culture, situation, the closeness of the relationship, you can use physical space to create many different nonverbal messages, including signals or intimacy and affection, expression, or dominance. We also have the voice. The voice is not necessarily speaking the language, but voice can be a sound uh, when you are uh, speaking with emotions. It can be conveying anger, can convey different things such as affection, sarcasm, confidence, or um, want to listen attentive. So voice is very also the highness and the lowness of the voice. It talks about pitch. No? So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So when you speak, other people read your voice in addition to listening to your words, of course, with the use of verbal language. Things they pay attention to include your timing, pace, and how loud and you speak, tone, and inflection. The sound that may convey understanding, such as things that you give to your tone of the voice and can indicate different things, no, such as sarcasm, anger, affection, or confidence, as I said. So nonverbal communication plays a different for many roles, no? Very important in our lives. It can help a person's ability to engage and establish interactions in everyday life. Better understanding of this type of communication may lead people to develop strong relationship with others. Okay, so that ends our lesson. Thank you very much for listening.